Fade in. Paris, 1942. A woman walks calmly through a Nazi checkpoint. Her papers are false. Her accent is perfect. Her mission, if discovered, means torture and death. She smiles at the German soldier, checking her documents. He hands them back. She walks on. Her name is not in any history book your children read in school. But without her, and dozens of women like her, the war might have ended very differently. Act 1. The War Within the War. When America entered World War II in December 1941, the United States government faced a problem it had never confronted before. Fighting a modern war required something beyond tanks and rifles. It required intelligence, information about enemy troop movements, secret weapons programs, political plans, and locations of resistance networks across occupied Europe. The newly formed Office of Strategic Services, the OSS, forerunner to today's CIA, needed agents who could move through enemy territory without raising suspicion. Agents who could blend in, build relationships, extract information, and transmit it back to Allied commanders. And slowly, reluctantly, and then with increasing urgency, they turned to women. The logic was cold and practical. In Nazi-occupied Europe, an unaccompanied man of military age raised immediate suspicion. An unaccompanied woman did not. Women could move through occupied cities, attend social events, befriend German officers, and work as couriers, carrying messages and equipment past checkpoints that might detain a man instantly. Women, the OSS concluded, made better spies. What they never fully anticipated was how extraordinary some of these women would turn out to be. Act 2. Virginia Hall, the limping lady. Of all the women who served as Allied agents in occupied Europe, none was more remarkable or more feared by the Gestapo than Virginia Hall. Hall was an American diplomat who had lost her left leg in a hunting accident before the war. She wore a wooden prosthetic limb she called Cuthbert. She was not supposed to qualify for field work. The OSS initially rejected her. She went to work for the British Special Operations Executive instead, and became, in the words of the Gestapo itself, the most dangerous Allied spy in France. Operating out of Lyon, France, Hall organized and supplied the French resistance. She arranged safe houses, coordinated weapons drops, helped Allied airmen escape capture, and built an intelligence network that stretched across southern France. She did this while managing a prosthetic leg in a country under enemy occupation, and while the Gestapo was actively hunting her with her description distributed to every checkpoint in France. When the Gestapo began closing in on her network in 1942, Hall was forced to escape over the Pyrenees Mountains into Spain, on foot in winter with her prosthetic leg. The crossing took 3 days. She reportedly sent a message to her SOE handlers. "Cuthbert is giving me trouble." A handler who didn't know Cuthbert was her leg responded, "If Cuthbert is giving you trouble, have him eliminated." She survived the crossing. She returned to France before D-Day, this time working for the OSS, organizing guerrilla operations and sabotage missions behind German lines. After the war, she was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, the only civilian woman to receive it during World War II. President Truman offered to present it in a public ceremony. Hall declined. She didn't want the attention. Her instinct was still the same as it had always been: stay invisible. Act 3. Noor Inayat Khan, the princess who became a spy. If Virginia Hall embodied the cold, practical courage of a professional intelligence officer, Noor Inayat Khan represented something altogether different, a courage born from pure moral conviction. Khan was born in Moscow in 1914, the daughter of an Indian Sufi mystic and an American mother. She grew up in Paris and London, trained as a musician and children's author. She was deeply gentle, described by those who knew her as almost incapable of deception in her personal life. She became one of the most important radio operators of the entire war. In 1943, Khan was sent into occupied Paris as the SOE's first female wireless operator in France. Within weeks of her arrival, the French network she had joined was almost completely destroyed by German infiltration. Every other agent fled or was captured. Khan was urged to return to England. She refused. She stayed in Paris alone, moving constantly between safe houses, transmitting crucial messages to London while the Germans actively hunted her signal. For months, She was the SOE's only radio link into Paris. The messages she transmitted helped coordinate resistance operations across France. She was eventually betrayed, historians believe by a French double agent, and arrested by the Gestapo in October 1943. Under interrogation, she revealed nothing. She attempted to escape twice, once nearly succeeding. She was transferred to Dachau concentration camp. On September 13, 1944, one day after being brought to Dachau, Noor Inayat Khan was executed. She was 30 years old. Her last word, witnesses reported, was a single word: liberté. She was posthumously awarded the George Cross, Britain's highest civilian honor. In 1949, Virginia Hall and Noor Inayat Khan are the names history has partially recovered. But they were not alone. The OSS and SOE sent dozens of women into occupied Europe and employed hundreds more in roles that were essential but even less visible. Women worked as code breakers at Bletchley Park in England, many of them recruited specifically because the work was considered too repetitive and detail-oriented for men. These women processed intelligence intercepts, decoded enemy communications, and helped crack the German Enigma machine's messages without being allowed to know what most of the intelligence they processed actually meant. Women worked as forgers, creating false identity papers, travel documents, and ration cards for agents operating in the field. A single mistake in a forged document could cost an agent their life. The women who made these documents worked for hours with magnifying glasses and single hairbrushes, replicating official stamps and signatures with microscopic precision. Women drove supply trucks across blacked-out English roads at night. Women trained resistance fighters in France, Belgium, and the Netherlands, teaching men how to use weapons many of these women had only recently learned to use themselves. Act 5. The price they paid. 13 women SOE agents were captured and executed by the Nazis during World War II. Most of them were killed at concentration camps, Ravensbrück and Dachau, in the final years of the war, when the Germans knew they were losing and accelerated their program of political executions. These women died knowing that their existence had been classified, that no one would be looking for them, that no government would publicly acknowledge them, that their families would receive no official notification of what had happened or why. They died as spies die, in secret, unacknowledged, their sacrifices invisible by design. After the war, British and American governments were slow to recognize these women. Some were denied medals on the grounds that they had not technically been members of the military, even though they had been deployed into combat zones and executed as prisoners of war. The argument that they were civilians was used against them, despite the fact that the governments had deployed them as agents in the first place. Justice came slowly, imperfectly, and usually posthumously. Closing sequence. Today, a statue of Noor Inayat Khan stands in Gordon Square in London, unveiled in 2012, nearly 70 years after her death. Virginia Hall is honored in the CIA's headquarters in Langley, Virginia, where her portrait hangs alongside America's most celebrated intelligence officers. But most of the women who served in these roles, the forgers, the couriers, the code breakers, the radio operators who disappeared into occupied cities and were never heard from again, have no statues. Their names, if they were ever recorded at all, are buried in classified files that took decades to open and are still not fully declassified. They walked past checkpoints with false names and pounding hearts. They transmitted messages in attics while German detection vans searched the streets below. They died in concentration camps with the names of their networks unspoken on their lips. They were America's secret agents, and they kept their secret all the way to the end. Fade to black. 13 female SOE agents were executed by the Nazis during World War II. Virginia Hall received the Distinguished Service Cross, the only civilian woman to do so in World War II. Noor Inayat Khan's last word before execution was, "Liberté." Many of their files remain partially classified to this day. End.